What I have today here is the world's most ridiculous SSD that you can buy. This is the Samsung 9100 Pro 8TB SSD. 8 terabytes of SSD of Gen 5 storage. But the thing is, after I tested this, there was a few things that I found that you need to know. Because it's not just throw money at the problem and get the better, bigger, faster drive. For some cases, you probably shouldn't buy this. But in some cases, you should 100% buy this, especially if you're a creator. And if you're wondering how does it line up to the 1TB version of this drive, you know, is bigger actually better? What about some of the other Gen 4 or Gen 5 drives? Is it worth it? Let's take a look. It's so annoying. I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to just change my Windows wallpaper just because my Windows isn't licensed. Well, why don't you try Hookies? That's a ton cheaper. And if you use the code TN20, you get it even cheaper. What do you mean? How do I get it and how is it possible? Well, see this video here, or the one you're watching? Click in the link on the video description, add the Windows 11 CD product to the cart, proceed to checkout, add the code TN20 for the extra discount. So what, the Windows 11 Pro OEM key is just $23.22? Yeah. Choose the preferred payment option and complete the purchase. The key will be available on the purchased orders in a few moments. Copy the key and paste it into your Windows activation settings and you're all done. Oh, that was easy. Is that Ryan Gosling? No. Anyway, by the way, the same discount code also works website-wide, so go check out other products, maybe like Microsoft Office. Now, if you want to check out this Samsung SSD or some of the other drives, I'm highly recommending you to check out the links in the video description below, because I want to talk about the pricing at first. Pricing with the SSDs is just almost impossible to make the video on because they're always on a sale. I'm going to give you the benchmark results in this video, and then you decide, oh, actually this drive was so much cheaper right now in my local store, in my local whatever, and the performance difference doesn't actually matter, so I'm gonna go with this one. So if you wanna find out the pricing, check it out in the video description below. Now, if you look at these drives side by side, what I have here is the 4TB and then the 8TB model. Now, as far as I know, Samsung's also done another thing here first that I haven't seen before. All of the other Samsung NVMEs have been single-sided. So they've got the controller, DRAM, and then the NAND chips in there. That's it. If you look underneath, there's nothing. They've put some kind of a copper heatsink there to probably get some of the heat off from underneath there as well, but it's just plain. But now when we're looking at the 8TB version, oh, things are happening underneath. What does that tell us? That tells us these NAND chips, they're only 2TB each available right now. 2, 4, 6, 8. And that's why the 4TB is in here. Once we have 4TB NAND chips available, we can have it single-sided again. Now, this drive has DRAM cache available. That's this bit over there, and that is 8GB. So they have 1GB per terabyte, and this 8TB model does have 8GB of that, which is pretty bonkers. So if you're thinking about just slotting this into any laptop slot, that's probably not going to work for you. Try to get something that cools the bottom side as well. But if you're not sure if your motherboard supports it, then pick up the heatsink version of this drive because it's very nice, low profile. All of my Samsung 9100 Pro heatsink versions are in a build somewhere, so I can't actually show you this, but B-roll should be showing you that the heatsink versions are very low profile and you can put it underneath a GPU even if you wanted to, because it just fits that. But let's start with the very basic drag race. Read and write, sequential read, how fast are they? Because the box says 14.8 gigabytes per second, not gigabits. Some people comment gigabits. No, it's not gigabits, gigabytes, baby bytes, okay? 14,800 megabytes per second. And in terms of read, I can actually see more than that. I can see 14,848, so it does deliver. It's within 0.6% of the fastest drive I have ever tested. The Phison E28 is actually slightly faster, goes 14.9, so we're getting almost 15, like the actual limit there. I think the limit is 16 theoretical. So this is still absolutely fantastic. The read speeds ridiculous, absolutely amazing for Samsung. I have actually chopped some of these drives off. So this is the first 25 drives on top of my list so that you can actually read the specs. Then we have the write speeds, and in here we see a similar thing. We're seeing 13,415. Interesting, the write speed isn't as fast, but at the same time, the write speed is exactly the same as the other capacities of the 9100 Pro drive. 2 TB, 4 TB, we're within 1%, so that just matches up very, very well. There are some drives that are better at that. The Kingston Fury Renegade G5 is on top of the chart and is about 5% faster, but is also a little bit more expensive. Let's take a look at some of the actual benchmarks then to realize how good this is for real world workflows. So this is PC Mark 10, and this simulates a quick system drive benchmark. This benchmark tests very light use of the drive as a secondary drive. So you're not running the operating system, you have it on the second drive, perhaps you're loading some games onto it, some photos, video files, but you're not editing actively with these. So you're opening, closing documents, just like a secondary drive where some things are stored. In here, the drive's not actually doing so well. 18% slower than the Kingston Fury Renegade that's on top of the chart. If you look at the Samsung's 2 TB and 4 TB version, they are actually higher. And here we start to see a very interesting trend. The 8 TB model, just because of the large capacity, actually it becomes a burden. And by that I mean large capacity necessarily isn't better, just because probably latency, just because of the bigger space. Imagine you've got a big warehouse, and if you try to find some kind of storage, or you're trying to find your box in the big warehouse, the smaller the warehouse is, the less you have to look for it. But now the 8 TB version seems to have a lot of it, which does have its own benefits, but right now in this particular test, it doesn't have the best results. You can see a lot of the 1, 2, 4 TB drives are up there. In fact, we're clicking on the very bottom end of some of the Gen 5 drives. You can see the Teamgroup Z540 is slightly lower, but that's the only Gen 5 drive that's lower that I have tested in this particular test. Moving on to data drive, and here we're seeing a similar thing. And data drive is similar tests where we're not running operating system or something like that on it, but more of a data, more of a storage drive where larger things get stored on it as a secondary, third, or fourth drive, something like that. And you can see it's not particularly impressive. In fact, this is one of the lowest Gen 5 drives I have tested. Teamgroup Z540 is a lot lower there and 23rd place, but this one is the second lowest Gen 5 drive. Now, there is still a huge leap between the Gen 4 and Gen 5 drive, and this test isn't particularly amazing for this. It's like testing Threadripper CPU for Adobe Photoshop, not really meant for that. But at the same time, data storage, 8 TB, it kind of makes sense. But there are faster Gen 5 drives available. Moving on to full system drive benchmark. This is perhaps one of the most important tests, because if you're running operating system of games, programs, anything of it, you just think, let me just get an 8 TB drive rather than getting multiple drives and then being confused. Let me just get one big drive. Perhaps that is not a good idea, as you can see in here. Now, we are on 12th place with the 9100 Pro, but you can see that the 2 TB and the 4 TB drives are performing a lot better than this one here. That just showcases the similar trend what I just mentioned. Just having larger capacity, perhaps it's not best used for operating system. Putting a smaller drive will make your operating system actually snappier, but this drive has a more specific workload, which I'll show you in a minute. If we're looking at the 4 TB and 2 TB, they are roughly about 12% faster in this particular test. At the same time, we are faster than the Data Legend 972 TB drive, that's the earlier version Gen 5 drive, and the Corsair MP7000, again Gen 5 drive, but a little bit earlier version. We're a little bit faster there, as well as the Teamgroup Z540, but at the same time, not picking up with the smaller capacities of the drive. And I know what you're thinking, let's move on to the consistency test, because this here is where we really seem to stress the test. And what I've usually seen on this test is that larger capacities and DRAM drives will perform better. So let's take a look, how does this perform? And we're doing really, really well. As you can see, the T705, that was one of the best drives that I have tested here, is just within 0.3% of it. So we're really, really performing on top of the chart. I would say the top 5 drive. Interestingly though, a little bit of a similar trend performs here, where the Kingston Fury Renegade G4 drive is just on top of the chart a lot faster. If we take that one out of the equation, then the crucial T705, Samsung 9100 Pro 4TB, and the T705 4TB version are all within 5%. But at the same time, the 4TB version, this drive here, in this test performs better, which is a little bit of a confusing one because the 8TB one should have had more capacity to run these larger things on. I have a theory why this is the case. So at this point, you might be thinking, maybe I shouldn't be buying this. Actually, I disagree with you. I think you should buy this, but it's meant for a specific use for specific people. Let me show you what I mean. We need to show you the terabyte written spec. So the warranty is 5 years, and the terabyte written spec actually lines up with all the other capacities. What you usually see is a lower end drives or a lower quality drives. What they do is, as the drive gets bigger capacity, the terabyte written spec doesn't line up with it linearly. So if 1 TB is 600 TB, then 2 TB is maybe 1000 rather than 1200, and so on. Whereas this 9100 Pro actually has a linear scaling with the terabyte written spec. The 8 TB has 4,800 TB written spec in the 4 years, which is just insane. And if you're a creator who plans to do a lot of editing and looking for an insane secondary drive, you should right now get super excited just because of that spec. And finally, this is my theory why this drive is not performing as well as the lower capacities of this drive. It's probably because of the SLC cache buffer. So basically, what this means is you've got a buffer of a size on this drive that manages to keep up with this speed. Once that buffer fills up, the drive actually drops the speed to a lower one. Now, Samsung doesn't mention this SLC in any of their documents. I couldn't find this anywhere. In fact, I asked my contact who manages Samsung devices, and they're just not able to give me this number either. The only thing that Samsung's able to give me is dynamic SLC cache buffer. What does that exactly mean? How big is it? My theory is it's exactly the same size as the 4 TB, but because it adjusts dynamically, it is not going to be as efficient and perhaps has lower latency because of these tests, what you see over here. So because the SLC cache buffer isn't bigger, that doesn't give us an advantage in terms of benchmark and speed because we have double the capacity. Yes, we can fill the drive more, but because the drives, both of the 4 and 8 TB, drop down the speed at the same point, there's not going to be an advantage for the 8 TB model in this particular drive consistency test, because there we're writing over 21 TB of files on it, and if you drop the speed at the same time, you're not going to see the benefit. That being said, there is a specific workflow where this drive is amazing, and if you've looked up to this point in this video, you probably already know what this is. If you are a creative professional or someone who has large assets and you need to store them on a secondary drive, then this is amazing drive, because I highly doubt that your assets in one bunch are more than 442 gigabytes. That's almost half a terabyte of assets, which means that let's say you load lots of things on it. You've come back from a shoot and you're writing terabytes and terabytes of footage on it. In the end of the day, you can still read and write drives on the 8 TB model, and you're gonna have insane performance. And I think for creative professionals, this is where this drive is actually for you. Video editors, 3D, any other creators who look in large asset folder, boom, this is the one that you should get, because it's large capacity, and I don't think there is really any other option out there. This is just a fantastic drive. So if that's you, check out the links in the video description below. Thanks guys for watching. If you want to reach out, I'll always get back to my Minect messages within 24 hours, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.